Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ChiroBusinessMojo. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle player, or MP3 player. Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Yes, that's me. I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Thank you once again for spending some of your time with us. Today on the show, I want to talk to you a bit about communication. It is a big factor in the success of your practice and the success of your patient's recovery from their problems. And I keep running into this. This is a recurring theme with these interviews I am doing with professionals in the industry. So this is a good one. I think you're going to want to listen, and I hope you are going to gain some fabulous, actionable information. So why does this matter? Well, it matters for a variety of reasons. Most importantly, patients are more compliant if we can effectively communicate our message to them. This directly affects their recovery. Their recovery directly affects the referrals, what they say about you and your practice in the community. And this directly affects your bottom line, the financial success of your practice. In a bigger sense, more people are going to be spreading the word about the chiropractic message, which is great. And this ultimately creates a healthier, happier group of folks and nation and world, which is the ultimate goal, right? So what are the mistakes we are making? Well, one of them is speaking too long. Just about all of us are in love with the sound of our own voice. I know mine's beautiful, and I do love it. Just kidding. But I am here to tell you that most of us get in front of patients, and we just start talking, and we are very highly educated. So maybe we use a lot of big doctor words because we want to show people how smart we are. That's a second problem that we make. We focus too much on patient education instead of giving good info. And what I mean by that, the difference would be patient education is typically an agenda. Right? We're going to talk about gluten-free diet or getting more exercise or whatever that happens to be. And we're very focused on this educational piece rather than just giving some good info. Now, the difference, think about a Dr. Oz or the show The Doctors. They're just giving good info. And yes, there's an agenda behind it, but it's very much given and delivered in an informational way. If we can speak to our patients more in that manner, that's going to be helpful. So because communication is such an important deal, a lot of the patient management groups have developed scripts. Now, if you've listened to the show before, you know that I just abhor scripts. I don't like them. I understand the need for them. And one of the reasons behind it is, well, we want to give doctors the right words. But what inevitably ends up happening, in my opinion, is people read them and they're almost delivering the lines like a bad actor would. Yes, Mrs. Jones, do you see here on this x-ray what I'm talking about? And what do you think is going to happen over time if we don't correct this problem? That sort of speaking to me is just absolutely foreign. I don't talk like that. And if someone talked to me like that, if I was in another healthcare provider's office, it would turn me off immediately. So that's something I wish would go away entirely. But what I really promote and what I believe in, and I've heard this from other folks, it's not just me saying it, is a framework. If you can come up with a framework in your office that you're going to use, come up with whatever way of delivering that message that you want to. But the framework that we're all going to work within is the important piece. And you can get that from others. You can get it from me. You can come up with it yourself. But I believe it's important to have one. So if you decide to develop your own framework, here's what I recommend. Write down some bullet points. Quick thoughts of what it is you want to get across to your patient. Now remember, we see patients over and over and over for the same conditions very often. So it's not too hard to do to come up with a familiar set of ideas that we want to communicate. The second thing I would do is come up with key phrases that you want to use to communicate those ideas. So a couple I'll say recovery is a process, not an event. And that's when I'm talking about this is going to take a while. And I might even go a step further and say, think about if you wanted to learn to play golf or get good at golf. You wouldn't take one lesson and say, yep, nailed it, and move on. You're going to do that repeatedly because we know that we get better the more times that we do it. Or let's say you want to lose weight. You're not going to diet once. Or you want to build up muscles. You don't work out once. The way it works with the body is we need to come back to this many times until we start getting the change we are trying to make. So those sorts of things can be helpful. And then that way they're sort of stored in the Rolodex. I know I'm giving away my age if you don't know what a Rolodex is, but we've got those in our brain. We can just pull them up and go right to those and start delivering that message. After you've come up with a framework, just take into account the psychology of people. And I don't say the psychology of patients because the patients are people and we're all coming at it from that perspective. So what am I talking about when I say psychology? I'm talking about the nature of people. And most of us, in fact, not all of us, are very selfish creatures, for better or worse. That is how we are. What's in it for me? WIFM, you've heard that before. Dr. Michelle Robin, who's been on the podcast, she says MMFI, make me feel important. All of us want to know what's in it for us, and please, someone make me feel important. And listen to me. That's part of making me feel important, right? The other thing is that we are bombarded with messages. Day in, day out, television, advertising, it's coming to us everywhere from the internet. So all of us have sort of shut down a little bit, and we've all got very short attention spans as a result of this. Another factor you have to consider is that we're all creatures of habit. We get in certain patterns of doing things and thinking, and we just sort of stick with them. That's the nature of us as human beings. And sometimes we're just plain lazy. That can happen a lot easily, maybe as part of a habit. But I'll tell you what, people who are in pain are a little bit more motivated than your average Joe to do something about it. So what do? Well, in order to address that basic need of wanting to feel important, we want to speak directly to our patients. We want to talk directly to them about their needs, uncover those needs, and their problems. So really, it tends to be focused on their ADLs, their activities of daily living. I can't pick up my grandson anymore because of my neck pain. So the neck pain is the problem, but from their point of view, their need is that they want to be able to pick up their grandson. So you really focus on those needs and put those at the top of the list of what you're going to be talking about and treating first and foremost. You want to adjust to their style and their personality. And I don't mean chiropractically adjust, but I mean, when you go speak to someone who's sort of rough and gruff, you might want to mirror a little bit of that. Don't become rough and gruff yourself. We're the doctor that's in the room, but we do want to sort of mirror or emulate people to a certain degree. Now, part of my background, I was in sales, and this was just a basic sales skill. If someone was kind of slow and from the South and maybe talked a little bit like this, you didn't want to start emulating them and mocking them, but you did maybe want to slow down. You maybe wanted to model a little bit of your body language after theirs. Or if they're standing there with their arms folded, maybe slowly fold yours too. People like other people who are like them. This is a basic psychologic thing, to touch on that a little bit more. And so maybe do a little bit of mirroring. People feel more comfortable when they're around someone that they can relate to, and this makes you more relatable. Now, most of us on this next one are doing it, but that is that we take a personal interest in our patients. We see a huge cross-section of the public. You have got older folks, younger folks, athletes, all kinds out there. But one of the things I do in my practice is that I spend time really getting to know what is important to that person. So, for example, there are some things that I know nothing about, but I've done a little homework between visits so that I could have a conversation with my patients on things like, I got a patient who loves antique race cars. I don't know anything about them. Just not something I really follow or know much about. But he talks about it every time he comes in. He buys these cars. He loves to show them to me. So I do a little bit of Googling so that I can have a slightly, for me, educated conversation about the cars. And he loves it. He'll come by not for a visit necessarily, but just to show me his latest car and take me for a drive. So that's pretty cool. I've treated farmers before. Now, I know nothing about farming. This is another one. But, I look at what's going on in the world of farming and maybe talk a little bit about, when you harvest that corn. Oh, yeah. I talked to my other patient who's harvesting, and wow, there's a lot of harvesting going on. But that sort of a thing. I've got patients who are hunters. I know nothing about hunting. I'm not a hunter, but I learn a little bit to talk about it. And I'm never try to be something I'm not. The patients all know that. I tell them, hey, I know very little about this, and then I show interest and talk about what I can that relates to their interests. So as you're going through this with your patients, you are really doing a couple of things. The first one, you are trying to build rapport. Some of the ways that you can build that is your physical appearance. I've mentioned it before, but you want to take good care of yourself. You want to model a healthy lifestyle. When you're talking with a patient, you want to sit at their level, not behind a desk. You want to make eye contact with them. You want to use their name as often as possible. Dale Carnegie said in one of his books, people are in love with the sound of their own name, and it is the first thing they've heard in their lives, and we're just the sweetest sound we're ever going to hear. So don't go crazy with it, but do use their first name on a regular basis, and give them your full attention. Try not to be distracted. I know we all get busy in our offices, but with phone calls and patient flow, try to take a little bit of extra time, or at least the time that you do have with the patient, be fully engaged with them. Another thing you want to do is you want to be as credible as possible. And I do that in a number of ways. I try to give them a realistic expectation of their recovery with the good and the bad and the ugly, everything that goes along with that. And as these things come to fruition over the patient's care plan, they see that I know what I'm talking about, or maybe I've got some clinical experience. And so that helps develop trust. Another thing that you should be doing in your report of findings is talking about risks, benefits, and alternatives to your care. And one of the things I always talk about is, well, here are the risks, and I'm very straightforward with them. Here are the benefits, and here are the alternatives. And I lay out, physical therapy, or maybe a medical doctor who's going to give, prescription drugs or surgery or whatever the case may be. But what I'm doing, the point is I'm not trying to own everything. I'm not saying I am a chiropractor and I have the secret sauce to all of your ills. Now, we may believe that's true. We all wish more people got adjusted and that they would be healthier as a result. But I don't try to own every problem that comes in there. In fact, when I'm giving the benefits and risks and alternatives, I'm mentioning, medical doctors and PTs, and I might say a word or two about what they're going to do, all in a very positive way. But the patient, 9 times out of 10, will say, oh, I don't want drugs. Nope, that's why I'm here. Now, last thing I want to do is go get cut open. So they're usually on board with that. But again, you are establishing a credibility and increasing the likelihood of trust, because you're not sitting there saying, don't talk to other folks, don't see anyone else. I have got all the answers. And lastly, because we are creatures of habit, when you are explaining to patients home exercises and instructions, I find that compliance goes up a whole lot if we can mate those activities with something they're already doing. So, for example, I'll say when you wake up, every time you brush your teeth, you will do your neck exercises. So that means when you wake up in the morning or before you go to bed. Or I'll tell someone, every time you come back from lunch at work, you're going to sit down in your chair and you're going to spend 3 minutes doing these exercises. But that tends to help people be compliant because everyone brushes their teeth, at least they should be. And it's a habit. It's already there. It's already instilled in our brains to do this. So put a Post-it note up right by where your toothbrush is in the bathroom, and it says neck exercises. I give them a handout as well. So I'll tell them, tape this up. That's an even better reminder. But try to marry those two things together. The behavior you want them to do with the one that they're already doing on their own. And you're going to see compliance go up. And again, compliance goes up, people get well, and everything else gets better as a result. So that is it. I hope you have found this helpful. Upward and onward. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Go to chirobusinessmojo.com for show notes on today's episode, and jump on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review if you enjoyed the show.